record on this computer. Yes, it says we're recording. Awesome. So we are now recording. And now I'm going to make us live onto Facebook. Maybe one day. It's always an adventure trying to get this thing to go live, because the delay is such that you can never really tell exactly when it's gone. So it's always.
Facebook's been slow.
I'm sorry?
I said Facebook's been slow today too, because I was uploading stuff even early in the day and it was slow.
Well, let's see here. This is going to be our CMC chat. That is all things hero. CMC chat. Whoops. All things. I wish they would let me do this part ahead of time, because it takes up an extra couple of minutes. All right, go live. So we should be going live here momentarily. Let's see when it tells me we are live.
It has the live button up on mine.
Does
Mine
it?
too.
Okay, now it's up on mine. Cool thing. Excellent. So, hello, everybody who might be watching online. We are going to chat about heroes this evening. So if you have questions, you are more than welcome to put them in the comments below this video. I have my handy dandy second device over here so that I can look for questions. My name is Jennifer, and I run the Coastal Magic Convention. And we have lovely featured authors with us this evening to discuss heroes and why we love heroes. It's a fantastic evening. We have Tere Michaels, and we have Gail Martin, who is also writing as Morgan Bryce, and we have Kait Ballenger. So why don't we start with Kait and then go to Gail and then to Tere. Just one or two quick sentences, a brief introduction of what you write, and then we'll jump in with some questions. Miss Kait?
All right. Hi, everyone. So for those who don't know me, I'm Kait Ballenger, and I write sexy paranormal romance. Right now, I'm working on a series called The Seven Ring Shifters that is cowboys meets werewolves. So cowboys by day, wolf shifters by night. And I'm from Central Florida.
Hi, I'm Gail Z. Martin and Morgan Bryce. As Gail, I write epic fantasy, urban fantasy, steampunk, and more. So on the urban fantasy side, I fit in on Coastal. And as Morgan Bryce, I write urban fantasy, male paranormal romance. So sexy thrills and spooky chills. And I'm a huge supernatural fan, so I always joke that I write worlds Sam and Dean could walk into and feel right at home.
Hello from the Metro NYC area. It's very cold here. It's very not Central Florida. I'm Tere Michaels. I write contemporary romance. I also write a dystopian series that book 3 is finally coming out in February. Finally. Thank you all for being patient. And basically, I write happily ever after in the big city, whether it's dystopian or nice and normal. That's what I do.
Okay, so I'm a geek about words, and so I often will look up the definitions of words, especially if I'm going to be talking about things in a panel. I will often look up things and find out what the actual definitions are. So I looked up the definition of hero. Hero is defined as a person who is admired or idealized for courage, outstanding achievement, or noble qualities. So why don't we start with Tere and then go to Gail and Kait. Do you feel like you agree with that definition? And do you think the heroes in your books fit that definition?
Yes, but I tend to write them after they have made a colossal mess of their lives, and they're sort of trying to regain that title.
Gotcha.
They probably don't feel like they deserve it anymore. But yeah, I think I would agree with that. I think though it's taken into the context as like, woo, hero, woo. And I kind of like the unsung version of it.
Gotcha.
Or, you know, the muddy knight who, while the king is waving and taking credit, is like, I'm going to go stop bleeding and change my armor. I'll be right back. Like that's the hero that I tend to go to.
Gotcha.
And yes, I definitely write that guy.
Gail, what do you think? Do you agree with the definition?
Yeah, I think especially on you know the noble qualities piece, but I also write scuffed up, wounded, scarred guys who have made some mistakes, have been hurt very badly, and who keep on keeping on despite that, trying to do the right thing, but they may have sort of they are trying to provide hope for other people, but they may have given up some on themselves. So some of my heroes have been Han Solo and Mal Reynolds and the Doctor, who, you know, below the smile actually has been through a lot. And, you know, of course, the Winchester brothers, people who have a lot of scars to show for their good deeds. And of course, they get their happily ever after, but they have to work for it.
Right. Kate?
I absolutely agree with both Tere and Gail. I think that my heroes are often underdogs at the start that kind of have to earn their happily ever after. So I think they're closer to that mission by the end of the book. So I like to write like heroes with a lot of like alpha capitulation at the end. They have to like beg on their knees for forgiveness from the heroine for all the wrongs they've done. So they're kind of roughed up at the beginning, right? Like Gail and Tere were saying, they're scarred, they're rough around the edges, but the noble qualities are there underneath all the dirt and grime. We just gotta take the journey of the book to unearth those qualities a lot of the time.
Gotcha. So who are you? We'll start with Gail on this because you've mentioned quite a few. Who are some of your favorite heroes? Not necessarily characters that you've written, but maybe people or characters from other books or TV series. What other characters would you say really epitomize the title of hero?
I mentioned Han Solo, whom I still swoon over after all these, and Mal Reynolds from Firefly, and of course the Winchester brothers from Supernatural, and the 10th Doctor is my favorite. And they're all wounded heroes. They're all scarred heroes, and they're people who've made sometimes colossal mistakes and have tried to make up for it. In books, I absolutely fell in love with Vaniel Ashkavron in Mercedes Lackey's The Last Herald Mage. And more recently, I love Charlie Cochet's third series and Mary Calmace's U.S. Marshals series. And they are really some badass heroes, but they've got some troubled times in the background. And I love Reese Ford's books, and her heroes really have some dark background to get over, but she does them so well.
Right.
And let me toss in Jordan L. Hawkes, Widdershins, because I just got to mention Wyborn and Griffin.
Anybody else have some favorite heroes from other stories?
Yeah, I agree with Gail. I love Han Solo. I just finished binging The Mandalorian with my oldest son, so I'm like all about Mando right now. Like Pedro Pascal, yes. I'm also a big Sam and Dean fan from Supernatural. I think they're great heroes, and they have their dark moments, but they're always good underneath it all. And as far as books go, he's kind of like I think a romance cult classic hero, very anti-hero. I love Derek Craven from Lisa Kleypas's Dreaming of You, which is getting quite old now, but I know he has a huge fan base still, so that's one of my favorite heroes for sure.
Gotcha. Miss Tere?
The first one that actually popped in my head was Matthew Claremont from The Discovery of Witches.
Yeah.
He's written so differently than a lot of popular vampire characters in
Mhm.
that he'll brood, but he has shit to do. And oh,
Right.
I'm sorry, are we allowed to curse? So he's I like that he's an action person.
Right.
He's not sitting in his crypt. He's like, I'm gonna go get 400 medical degrees, BRB.
Right.
And so I love that he's constantly looking for redemption in a lot of ways,
Right.
but he's not hanging around being sad about it.
Mhm.
And so I really love that character a lot. And you know, of course, Han Solo. Also popped into my head, but Celie Booth from Bones.
Nice.
Like this is a character who has literally gone through so much that he really should be,
Excuse me.
bless you. Really nobody could blame him if he
Right.
went through life being a massive tool.
Yeah.
But he is constantly working on being a hero, caring about other people. So that it was
Right.
interesting. That just popped into my head as I was.
Mhm. Oh, I agree. He's a good choice. And I'm all about Matthew Claremont these days. So we actually
He's a
just
little
had
softer than some heroes, but I like him. Yeah.
we actually just had a Discovery of Witches discussion last night. You should have joined us. I should have pinged you, Terry. Goodness gracious. I'm awful. I'm so
Saying.
sorry.
I'm just saying, I might have been the one who recommended that series. I'm just going to point that out.
Okay, so now I feel bad.
All right.
Moving on.
I'll be fine. I'll be fine.
Well, we can totally have another discussion, so we'll come back to that. Okay, so everyone has mentioned that their heroes have had rough pasts of some sort. Either they've made mistakes or they've had a hard life, or something about their past has not been bright and shiny and ooh la la. So where would you draw the line as far as the actions that a hero can have before they are no longer a hero? Like, what do they have to do wrong to like lose that status? Is there a line? Is there not a line? Is there always a way to come back to the hero status? Or is there a place where if they go this far, they're no longer a hero?
I think there's certainly a place where heroes can go too far. If you're the type of person who hurts kids or assaults women, you're not a hero, right? Like, that's an automatic in my book. So I would say those are hard lines for me, right?
Gotcha.
But I think it's different for different people, you know?
No, I would agree. I mean, anybody who hurts kids or abuses animals or is a rapist, I'm sorry, they're not a hero. They may have a redemption arc. They may try to be a better person. Hopefully they will sacrifice themselves to save somebody who is more worth it, you know, to kind of get that redemption. But no, I'm sorry, they're not a hero.
Yeah.
They can't come back from that. Not that a real person who is truly contrite and remorseful can't, but in fiction,
Right.
you can't have a hero do that.
Yeah.
That's an important fiction.
Right.
Yeah, I'm not a big anti-hero fan. Like, I am not a fan of, well, he's been a douchebag for 3/4 of the book, but then he was really sorry. No.
Right.
My rule is if I am reading a story or watching something, and my first thought is that if that was my girlfriend, I'll be on the phone being like, why are you with him? He is a jerk. You need to leave him. Like, if that's my feeling, then you're never going to redeem him in my eyes, because it almost feels like your girlfriend going, yeah, but he's really nice when he's not being an asshole. And that, like, that's a cringe point for me. So a lot of times in fiction, they're like, yeah, he's a jerk. But deep down, I'm like, well, it just sounds to my head like you're making excuses for somebody who's abusive. So I'm not a fan. If people are willfully causing other people mental, physical, or emotional distress, I don't, not in my fiction. Like, I'm not that audience.
Right.
Well, and you know, it's become very trendy in some genres, particularly in the epic side of things, to go for completely, you know, grimdark, morally ambiguous characters. everybody's sort of bad, but sometimes good things come of it. And I got to admit, I'm just not into that. There's enough of that. If I want that, I'll read the headlines. You know, I want to sit down when I get my precious free time to sit down with the book. I want to know who the good guys are.
Right.
And that doesn't mean it has to be easy for them, or that they escape unscathed, or that it doesn't come at a cost, sometimes a dear cost. But I need to have somebody to root for. And so that's always my, promise, just like romance always has an HEA, or a happily ever after, a happily for now. You will always know who the heroes are in my books, and good will always win. The heroes will always win. Now, they may be beaten and bloody and, in bad shape at the end of the book, but they'll win. And so you don't, because I'm the kind of person who will skip to the end of a book to find out if it ends the way I want it to, and the guy I'm rooting for really turns out to be the hero and wins. I am terrible about that.
Yeah.
I will read the wiki on a series to make sure the good guy wins. So that's kind of my promise up front. The good guy wins in my stuff, because I need that. I can't live in those people's heads if they're awful people.
Yeah. I've been known to flip to the back pages of a book to not to read anything, but just to look for a name to make sure that like this person that I am invested in makes it to the end of the book. I don't necessarily need to know the details. I just want to know they're going to be there.
Same.
Oh, I'll totally read. I do not. When I watched Supernatural, every time there was a really stressful set of episodes, I read the wiki ahead to make sure it was all going to turn out okay. Because then I could relax and enjoy it, knowing that they were really going to get back together again. It was going to work out. If I had to actually sit on tenterhooks and wait to see it happen, too much stress. I'm terrible. My husband makes fun of me all the time for that. I'm terrible.
I'm currently teaching a class at Savvy Authors about endings. So that is absolutely my thing that I say to the other writers is, if your reader is invested in your story and you screw them at the end, they're gonna remember your name. That's all I'm saying.
For all the wrong reasons.
And they're gonna go, isn't that the no? And they're not gonna trust you.
Right.
Because you messed with them. So yes, I want, when you read my books, I want you to know who to root for. Are there great characters? Sure. I go a little crazy with that with my secondary characters, but my main characters.
Well, I always think when we get to the end of a book and somebody does one of those screw everybody over kind of things, I always think they're not writing that end for the benefit of the readers. They're writing it so that the other people in the industry, the reviewers or their colleagues, will go, oh, aren't they really clever? Look, they turned everything upside down. Isn't that just so cool? I want to make my readers happy.
Yeah.
And I think that's a big difference on who you're writing for. I'm writing to make my readers happy and give them an escape from the crazy in the world.
Right.
You want to mess with people, you got to kind of be a genius, like Shirley Jackson at the end of Haunting of Hill House. She's like, maybe she's crazy, maybe it's the house. Thanks for coming. Like, that's genius. Like, that's genius to me, because she didn't screw anybody, but she was like.
But that's not having somebody feel bad that they rooted for this person the whole time, only to find out that they're really the serial killer.
No, absolutely not. But I'm just, I'm agreeing that you have to have a level of smart and genius to be able to do it and not have people want to punch you in the head. Like, there's a difference between The Seventh Sign and getting the one, I'll remember it, but there was another one where it actually turned out to be a dream at the end. It was sort of like, what just happened? As opposed to an amazing reveal. And I think that particularly in romance, there's a very specific set of requirements for the end of your book.
Yes.
Like, you get clever in a lot of other genres, but you cannot get clever in romance. You just can't. Like, you just, I'm sorry, we had a meeting, there was a vote, you can't.
Well, and those of us of a certain age or who watched a lot of vintage television, there were two iconic endings. One was the end of Dallas, where Bobby Ewing, who had been dead, shows up in the shower, and it was now all a dream. And we had now been completely cheated out of like a season and a half for caring. Thank you very much. That was a drama. That was a bad ending. And then there was Newhart, where Bob Newhart ends the series in bed with the wife from his former TV show, The Bob Newhart Show. But it was a comedy. So it was like, yes, it's a dream. Ha ha, you're a comedian. This is funny. We weren't taking any.
You weren't
invested like a drama.
Yeah. And
you can do some things if it's a comedy.
Well,
that you can't in a drama.
Yes.
And something on TV that you can't do in a book.
Yeah.
Bless you.
Thank you. I think it's about respecting the characters and the readers, and your book is my teacher lead. Actually, I just wrote, that was my lecture for today. Respect your readers, respect your book.
Good job, Teach.
Everybody gets it.
Yay! We actually have a question from the comments. It says, so many heroes, quote unquote heroes, make the decision about what is best for everyone. They think they're doing the right thing, but in reality, they're completely steamrolling the others. How do you decide between confidence and conceit?
Oh, good question.
That is a good question.
I think it depends on the maturity of the character and what their particular insecurities are and what mistakes they've made and had bite them on the butt before. I mean, I don't have a whole lot of respect for somebody who keeps making the same mistake and never learns from it.
Mm-hmm.
But okay, we all do things that we think are good and it doesn't turn out that way. Learn from it. And I think if someone is younger or is really insecure or has, a lot of vulnerability and they're in a leadership position, they may be more inclined to do that. If they're old enough to know better, then I give them a lot less of a pass for not accepting input and just being an arrogant jerk.
Right.
Yeah. I think some of it also kind of comes down to responsibility, because if you have a hero who's in a leadership position, right, and he's responsible for people, you want him to sort of just go forward and go gung-ho for whatever is going to save the day, right? But for me, especially like in my books, when it's the romance between the hero and the heroine, he can't ever assume that he needs to be her hero or come in and save the day for her, because that's just going to tick her off and make her angry, right? And if he does that, he's going to be groveling for it at the end of the book because he's not responsible for her because she can take care of herself. But if we're talking about him taking care of people who maybe can't care for themselves, that's different. So I think it's about who is his responsibility to, and how is he fulfilling that role in being responsible to them?
And I think part of the question is probably how to decide which one of those things to do. Like, how much does the character do without overstepping?
Exactly, yeah.
One of the things, sometimes it's also, are they in a formal leadership position? Like somebody's a captain in the army and they have people who are reporting to them.
Yes.
As opposed to an informal.
Right.
Because one of the series long arguments between Sam and Dean in Supernatural is Dean continues to be the big brother who is going to make all the decisions, and they're now in their late 30s. And Sam is going, hello, adult here.
Yeah.
I can hold my own. Could you quit doing that?
Yeah.
And that's a growth period for both characters.
Tere, did you have a thought?
Yes. At first I was thinking, I tend to write very loner type characters in that they're emotionally isolated, so they don't usually make decisions for other people because they're not connected to people that way.
Gotcha.
But I was thinking that, but I thought of two specific events within two of my series that I thought, oh, okay, I think the secret is that that the reader has to fully understand why the character is doing that.
Mm-hmm.
Not that it's I'm the man,
Mm-hmm.
also macho, also doesn't that make you weak-kneed, but rather, or as a function of their personality because I am alpha, but rather they're making this decision because of something in their emotional arc, in their emotional makeup. So to me, that makes the difference.
Gotcha.
Not like he feels hurt, so he lashes out and makes decisions for her. That's sort of a quick fix, but like,
Right.
who is this person and why are they making that decision?
Right.
So that would be mine. Like, the reader should have to completely understand and be frustrated in that moment. Like, why are you doing that?
Right.
But I know why, but I understand why.
Gotcha.
And
And I have seen, I'm sorry?
I was going to say, kind of a corollary to that, one of the things I really hate in a TV show or in really any story is when someone makes kind of a forced error along those lines where he really should be smart enough not to do this. But because the author or the screenwriter wanted to get them into a pickle in the next chapter or the next episode, we're going to have him do something totally stupid, maybe even against character, when 2 lines of dialogue and a little more thought would have made this make sense. That also makes, right. Sometimes that is that I'm going to make decisions for everybody. Well, you don't really have to. Let's give this a little more thought and it could actually work better.
Right. What is your favorite thing about writing your hero character? Like, pick one of your hero characters. What is your favorite characteristic or trait of theirs that you like to write about? Something that defines their quote unquote hero status.
Their hero status? Because I was going to say sense of humor.
Hey, that works.
Yeah.
That works.
I like people who are adults and they're coping, and one of the ways they cope is to just be sarcastic or to just find even dark humor in a situation because that's how they cope. Like, I don't write characters, I don't think, that are outwardly angry people.
Right.
So they tend to communicate in sarcasm, so as not to appear vulnerable and at the same time not punch people. So I would say, yes, that is, I like that in my heroes, in that they're all relatively sarcastic, shockingly.
I was going to say, I can't imagine how that happened.
I'm just a really good writer to figure out how to do that.
I think for me, it depends on the individual hero. And, my favorite hero is always the one I just finished writing. So my favorite one right now, I would say it would be Sense of Humor, because I just finished the 5th book in the 7 Range Shifter series. And that character is, throughout the whole series, has been a real big jokester, right? So his thing was that he had that sort of sarcastic, witty humor, but that was definitely not the hero of the book before that, right? So I think it really just depends on the individual character, what I love most about them.
Gotcha.
I like characters who part of their arc is figuring out how not to fight the last war, meaning, they always say generals lose the war because they are trying to fix the mistakes they made in the last war, which may or may not apply at all to the current situation. And we do that in our own lives. Maybe we're coming off a bad relationship with somebody who lied to us. So now the instinct is we don't trust anything the person says. Well, you can't build a relationship without that. So if you are busy protecting yourself from the way the last person hurt you, you're not going to be able to accept the gift that the new person in your life is trying to give you. And I love that dance where the two characters are both coming at this with old scars, trying not to fight the last war. And it's hard. It's really hard. And you get to see a lot of the character in that. And that takes so much courage right there, aside from whoever's trying to kill them or all that, because it means, you could make a mistake and get hurt again, and this could be really bad. And so
Right.
it's vulnerability. And I love
Right.
that.
Yeah.
Gotcha. So I'm going to start with Tere because this answer is probably going to be very easy for you. And we'll see if there's anything that you might be able to add to it that will surprise us. What part of your own characteristics or traits do you find that your heroes have?
My really serious nature.
Mhm.
And my inability to find humor or sarcasm in anything. I actually gave a class once, gave a talk, and afterwards someone in the audience was like, oh, you're Matt. Because my literal inflection of the way I talk is this character. And yeah. To me, I am one of these people, and my characters almost entirely end up being this way in that they were adultified early in life. Like
Gotcha.
they were the third adult in the household, or the adult in the household at
Right.
a very young age. And so people who are very much used to being on their own, figuring stuff out, being the adult, handling things, and having to find a way to get through it, and that is
Right.
through humor. Because you can't punch everybody.
That's true.
That tends to get you a reputation. So yeah, that would be shockingly, now everybody who's ever read one of my books is like, oh, she's really not a good writer. She's just writing herself a lot of times.
Yeah,
Does
what
that
about
surprise
you?
you, Jennifer?
I don't know that that necessarily surprises me.
Give me a hard one next time with math or something.
Okay, I'll work on that.
Okay.
What do you think, Gail? Any part of your characteristics or traits that have ended up in your heroes?
Oh, heavens. Yes. If you know me well enough, you can just pick them apart. And I have had people who have known me for a long time going, you finally decided to deal with that in this book, didn't you? Huh? And yeah.
So for someone who has not read one of your books yet, what will they expect to find of yourself in your characters, in your heroes?
Well, I'm a total smartass, so you know that's certainly there. But I think a lot of the vulnerability. I covered up a lot, or maybe not so well in real life, but it's all there, bleeding all over the page in the books.
Kait, how about you?
Yeah, I tend to identify with my hero characters more than my heroines. And I think, you know, readers and even some friends might kind of be surprised by that. But in my personal life, I'm a very sort of take charge, like confident person. And, you know, I'm always the first person in the room to kind of speak up, at least when it comes to my family life. And so I think those qualities translate to my heroes, but I think like a pervasive sort of thread that goes between all of them is they all have this really stark sense of justice of what is right and wrong, like, you know, good and bad, dark and light, that sort of thing. And so they all have very strong opinions about protecting the weak and the vulnerable. And I feel like that's something that I personally feel, right? Like it's a strong sense of justice, social justice issues, that sort of thing. So I feel like that's something that ends up on the page a lot.
Gotcha.
Well, and I'm going to throw in, I'm also super, super persistent. And I remember being told once back in my corporate days when this was, you know, back in the early 2000s when it was a big deal to everybody wanted to do psychological profiling, you know, if you were in management. And one guy told me, one profiler told me that I was a great person to be in a plane crash with because I would get you off the mountain. Now, you might not like me anymore by the time I hauled your ass off the mountain.
Yeah.
I might have dragged you by the ankle, but we would get down to the bottom of the mountain and you would be alive. Thank you very much. And he wasn't wrong.
Yeah. I would agree with that, Gail. And I also have the similar trait of like, you're going to do this, whether you like it or not, right?
touched on it a little bit, but I wanted to ask maybe in a little bit more detail or maybe in a different way. The hero of a story is kind of thought as a singular thing, the hero, and the hero, one thing. How much do the other characters, the side characters, the brothers in a situation, the cop family, the Pack brothers, things like that, how do the other characters in the story, how much do they affect your hero? How much does your hero lean on them? Or is he more singular and universal? Now, Tere, you've already said that most of your characters are more singular. Even as a singular character, do they still rely on their surrounding characters, or is it more of a isolated thing?
I think they all start isolated, and I'm good. I don't need anything. Thank you. I'm fine. But so much of what I write is about found family or growing the family that eventually, as part of their arc, they come to be able to open up to other people. And I don't necessarily mean, in the Faith, Love, and Devotion series, Matt is alone and he's fine. Thank you. And then ends up getting brought into this family and becomes a stepfather, and then, spoiler alert, eventually a grandfather, and loves it, and he's great at it. Whereas in the Vigilante series, which is the dystopian series, Knox is very much like, I'm fine. Everybody's sort of 3 feet to the side, but it's been interesting to watch him because he's so alone, and he's creating this weird little group around him reluctantly. I mean, he's not pulling people into his orbit. People are getting stuck in his orbit, and he has to keep, hauling these people around as he does things.
Right.
But in writing the 3rd book, I really sort of got to play with the fact that he's not going to admit it out loud, but he's really starting to get used to these people, and he might vaguely like them. And if they want to stay, that's fine. And that's a huge, that's 3 books.
Right.
So I think that's always part of, for me, with my main characters mostly, that's part of their emotional arc. Is to move from the place of, not that they're, if only I had a family, that's not them. They're very self-reliant. And they sort of get pulled into these orbits where they have to interact and care about other people.
Right.
And sometimes they love it, and sometimes they're never going to write you, a Christmas card and say how much they care for you or anything like that. Or,
right.
Show it to you. But that's part of their arc. That's always, in all my stories, that's always part of the arc,
right.
is creating this sort of unit at the end.
Gotcha.
Or team.
Right. Kait, what do you think?
I would say mine take a similar arc. I mean, so the heroes I'm working on right now are obviously all part of a wolf shifter pack. So there's a certain amount of team playing that has to go on in that world building dynamic. I mean, they're all working together for the one common good of protecting their pack, their family, right? So they have different roles within that where they have to work together. But I do think that there's an element of them seeming like they're more loners and isolated at the end of the book, and not necessarily in the actions they're taking, but maybe just mentally, right? Like they feel mentally alone. And then it's by the end that they realize that, no, I actually have this support system and this family and this pack around me, right? That is going to love me no matter what, right? And so I think there's always that constant movement toward accepting help, because I think a lot of the time, like the arc of the alpha heroes that I write, they don't want to admit they need help in the beginning, but they have to open up and be vulnerable by the end of the book in order to be lovable, right?
Right.
So they have to show that vulnerability, and that's a struggle for them a lot of the time.
Gotcha. Gail?
I think, well, since as Morgan Bryce, I write LGBTQ characters, for a number of the characters, they really can't go home to their birth family. And so they have made it on their own. And sometimes that involves creating their own found family. And sometimes it means going through a period of saying, no, I'm just fine by myself. If nobody's around, they can't hurt me. And that's is bringing people back into that found family. And sometimes, usually my folks have at least one person. Maybe it's a mentor, maybe it's a platonic best friend, maybe it's somebody that they trust from before, like an army buddy or something. There's usually at least one person that's still a connection with them.
Right.
They're not totally out there. And then over the course of the books and the series, and I tend to write a lot of established couples, watching those layers peel away and letting themselves be more trusting and more vulnerable and earning that trust, that to me is the hard part, because as much as I love the excitement and all the good, brain chemicals of watching people fall in love for the first time,
Mm-hmm.
the real hard part is after they're trying to stay together,
Right.
said as somebody who's been married for 30 years. So, that's the real challenge. And I love watching, I love making that chemistry happen.
Gotcha. I'm checking real quick to see if there's any other. That last question actually came from the comments on the video. That was Jody. Let me just check here. It looks like people are talking amongst themselves over there. So let me see if there's any other questions. Hang on one second here. Somebody says, yay, book 3 is coming.
What? Let me guess who that was from.
And let's see, someone approves of Booth as a hero.
Booth.
Let's see here. It's telling me there are more comments than it's letting me see. All right, Facebook, get your shit together. Let's see here. Okay. All right, there's another question that says, do your heroes ever go down a path you weren't convinced that they would take? So basically, have they surprised you? How have your heroes surprised you in your stories? Like, did you ever have a game plan for them and then they decided that things weren't going to quite go to your game plan?
Oh yeah. They behave on their own all the time. I think so in this last book I was working on, it's book 5 of the 7 Range Shifter series, and it's Blaze's book. And I had, I write a very thin outline before I draft, and so I have kind of like a vague idea of what's going to happen, but the details aren't quite hammered out. And I was convinced that this was a friends to lovers story, and I had set up in the previous book that they were, best friends, and I was ready to push these two characters together, and I was convinced that he was going to be the one that was saying, no, we can't go beyond being friends. And then we got like one chapter in and that didn't happen. So he was the one pursuing her rather than the other way around, which was how I had originally imagined the story, which changed a lot of the scenes that I was thinking was going to happen, but it ended up working out okay in the end. But when I went into the story, I was thinking that he was going to be the one saying, no, we can't be together. But then he was like, no, we really are more than friends, and we have been for a long time. Let me show you that. So that was a complete twist from what I had planned for him. And
Gotcha.
I've had other characters do that before, but that was the biggest one because it changed the whole book.
Gotcha. Gail, you've nodded quite a bit.
Well, I just really have had this happen in the one I'm working on right now, which is, it's called Gruff, and it's for the Once Upon a Grim male romance fairy tale anthology that's coming up. And I have goat shifters and fated mate story. And one of my characters is a Tennessee fainting goat. That's going to cause. And he has, since he left his family, he's lived in cities and he hasn't really been able to shift except in his apartment. And he has never been able to tell anybody that he's a shifter. And now he comes to this town that is very, very shifter friendly, because hollow world, and he is really having trouble embracing that side of himself and being out about being a goat. He's out about being gay. That's long old history, but this goat part, you know, that was a secret. And so he's sort of weirded out when when other shifters can tell he's a goat. That's just sort of, you know, and then he falls for this guy that he thinks is a goat. And this is all just new territory for him, and I did not see that coming.
Gotcha. How about Miss Tere up there? Have your heroes surprised you? No, you got them snapped into shape, huh?
Well, I have a very weird process of writing in that I have to work it out in my head for a very long time, sometimes more than a year, before I start writing. So I've examined them so completely, and their emotional arc is so ingrained in my head that writing details of the story around them might change. Supporting characters might change, but I'm really never surprised. Like, I never have a moment of, what are you doing? Like, maybe plot wise, like I've had that suddenly go, like when I was writing book 3 of The Vigilante, it was supposed to be the last book. And as I careened towards 100,000 words, I was like, oh, wait, there's another book. That's the most surprising thing that ever happened to me, is that I honestly was writing book 3. This is the end, wrap it up. I've had the last scene of this book written for 6 years. And then suddenly went, oh, my subconscious has been adding a book 4 to this book.
Right.
That's the biggest surprise. But honestly, I spend so much time with my characters before I start writing them that they don't have a choice. Like, if they literally have no choice in the matter. We have spent far too much time together. I know all their secrets. They can't come. Yeah.
Okay, so I just checked again, and I don't see any other questions. And we went through my questions, and we are actually at the 50-minute mark, which is right around where we were shooting for. So I think we did pretty good. Is there anything else anyone would like to add about their heroes, or should we do our wrap up? Do you have anything else? Anything quirky or interesting about any of your heroes that you would like to share? Anything unusual? No. Okay, so why don't we go with, what do we have coming up for 2021? Do we have books planned? Do we have events that you'll be going to? What's on your docket that we can expect from you in 2021? I see people nodding, so let's go with Kait first.
Yeah, so event-wise, of course, I'll be at Coastal Magic, and I'm looking forward to that. Otherwise, I don't really have any big events planned with everything going on. I'm kind of being tentative about things, but I do have some releases. So in July 27th, it will be book 4 of the 7 Range Shifter series comes out. That's Cowboy Wolf Legend right now. They're thinking about changing the title, so it might be different by that point, but but it's coming out in July. That's Maverick's book. And then I'm not sure of the release date for book 5 yet. They're thinking maybe end of November. That is Blaze's book, so we will see about that one. But then I'm also going to be doing a Christmas novella and an anthology with a couple other paranormal authors, and that one is coming out on December 7th. So there will be at least 2, possibly 3. And then I have an audiobook that is just sort of releasing. I released it direct. It's the audiobook of Cowboy Wolf Trouble that just came out, and it should be out at all major retailers soon as well. But you can get it direct now. So those are my releases for the year.
Cool. How about you, Gail?
Well, let's see. Loose Ends, which is in my Badlands series, just came out on audio. And coming in March or April, we're still a little squishy on the launch date, is the Once Upon a Grim anthology, which is multi-author. And then I have an April 8th release date for a novel in the Magic Emporium multi-author series. Since we're going with multi-author, there'll be a New Year's Eve at Caneham Castle multi-author, same castle, different couples, toward the end of the year. And then I'm definitely shooting to come out with new Witchbane, Badlands, Kings of the Mountain, and Treasure Trail books this year as Morgan Bryce, plus some stuff on the Gail side. And I'm one of the con runners for Continual, so I will be at Coastal Magic. I'm always at Continual, which is an online multi-genre convention that never ends.
Mm-hmm.
And I swear I'm as busy now with virtual conventions as I was with in-person conventions, which is a wonderful thing.
That's cool. Just so you know, there's comments there's a comment under the video that says, "Yay, goat shifters!" So, all right, Miss Tere, what have you got coming up this year?
So far, just the only thing that's definite for release is, of course, book 3 of the Vigilante series.
Right.
We'll see when book 4 comes out. I make no promises. After the last one, there'll be one. That's all I'm going to say. I'm not making any promises at this point. I teach every month, basically, at Savvy Authors.
Right.
If anybody would like to look me up. We're having a good time over there. And that's pretty much it. I've got a lot of stuff I'm working on.
Yeah.
Yeah,
cool.
I had a really long, as you Coastal Magic friends know,
Yes.
a very long dry spell. So it's over. But
and I'm sure it will be worth the wait. I have no doubt. I have no doubt.
We're not going to scoop it though. We're going to be very gentle with it. Pet it nice.
Yes, absolutely. All right. All right, ladies. Well, I appreciate you taking some time to hang out with me this evening. I enjoyed our conversation talking about all of your lovely heroes.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. So if anybody watching this, either now has questions or comments, you can put them underneath, and then we will pass them along to the lovely ladies. If you're watching this later from a recorded process, either on YouTube or on Facebook, thank you for watching, and we will see you guys later. We'll see you in February for Coastal Magic.
Absolutely.
Good night, all. I'm gonna close this out alive here. All right, so live stream is done. Now I'm gonna stop.